First, I'd like to say that what we were doing here is we had heard, of course, the crop circles, and our assessment was that from various reports there was an aerial phenomenon component to it, some type of what we considered probable extraterrestrial activity. And so we had a team come here in 92, 93, 94, and again this year in 1995 to do research in the area, but particularly geared towards moving beyond just a sky watch, but trying to actually make contact with whoever were making these crop circles in some sort of a context of interspecies communications and relations. So we had a team set up in the farm there below Woodborough Hill, a disc-shaped craft catapulted through the zenith of the sky, covering about, I would say, somewhere around 30 degrees of arc, and was quite low, actually, and quite clear, because the air was crystal clear. And you could see the lights going around it counterclockwise in this very unusual pattern. Something very unusual happened. That is that we had a what appeared to be a counterclockwise light up in the clouds, shining down on the clouds, that was making a circular sort of pattern on the cloud tops. We couldn't see the object that was causing this, but it was very distinct and all of us saw it. I'm making a very long story short here, of course.
Yes.
But what happened is that between 11 and 12, a very rapid rainstorm ensued, and we later found that it was centered absolutely over the site where we were researching, that if you went 5 minutes in any direction, it hadn't rained at all. Just past midnight, there was a extraordinary event that then began. We had a member of the team who was in a car behind mine come running around, beating on the windows, and I opened it, and he said, "There's a spaceship coming through the field." And I said, well, that's very, I thought he was joking, of course, and I turned, and not far above the field, perhaps 10 feet, was a approximately 100 to 150 foot diameter disc with lights going around counterclockwise, with a sort of a cone or dome on top, with 3 lights on the top of it, 3 or 4 amber lights. Now the lights that were going around counterclockwise were identical, and the shape of this craft was identical to the object that came straight overhead on the 24th at about between 10 and 10:30 that I had seen. So this was obviously orchestrated, and what I think occurred is that this rainstorm was actually artificial. And it was designed to provide an envelope of security wherein this event could take place, because had it been on the night when it was very clear, all these hilltops were covered with people, some of whom were intelligence folks who were trying to see what we were doing on this research project. And as it turned out, the rainstorm ran everyone off, and we were really the only ones left in the area, except for 1 or 2 other witnesses who had been up on Knapp Hill and one other place, who saw parts of this event from a distance. Well, at any rate, we were in there, we got out. Unfortunately, our camera people, everyone had left. We just had a skeleton team there, but we did get one of our lights out. And we have these high-power lights, and we signaled to it, and it signaled back. So what we would do is we'd hit it twice, perhaps 3 times with a light, and it would send back the same pattern back to us from flashing its lights on and off.
Yes.
Shortly after this, one of the amber lights on the top of the dome seemed to detach and go off into the mist. What it was doing is anyone's speculation. I honestly don't know. It then moved closer to us. At one point, it was moving behind some trees in the field. Now, I want you to understand that this was occurring in the same field we were in. In other words, we were along a farm road, and a field began and commenced going towards the Alton Barns. And in that very field is where this craft was located, about 10 feet above the field. It moved towards us as we signaled to it. And we signaled like this, communicating back and forth just by sort of binary hello, as you're there and we're here, sort of signaling for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then it receded and went off into the mist and was lost to us. Now, Interestingly, the whole time that was happening, and for the next hour until about 1:30, I was holding a new compass, and the compass was magnetically affected so that its magnetic north changed counterclockwise, the same direction the object was rotating, all the way around the dial. It eventually went 360 degrees right on around. And at about 1:20, I'd have to look at my notes, but about an hour later, we saw another craft, but more distant, just as you would be looking here to the right of Woodborough Hill, that was there for just a few moments, but did signal to us. Also during this hour-long period, we had sensory, a sort of electrostatic sensation on our skin, where the hair would stand up on end, and there was other electromagnetic effects in the area. We had the only sound that we heard from this craft was a sort of a low humming sound at one point, but it was very brief. And other than that, this was totally silent, notwithstanding the fact that it was very close. I mean, to give your viewers an idea, it would be as if, as you look across this field in this direction, it would be in this at the end of this field. It would be just a few hundred feet away, and very brilliant. This was not a light in the sky. This was a structured craft with a form and mechanical function. None of the it does go beyond science in the sense that once you make the assessment that these are under intelligent control from non-human life forms, then it becomes more than just science. It becomes a phenomenon that requires a visionary, comprehensive approach that includes interspecies communication, the concepts of interplanetary relations and communication, and what sorts of things we as a people must do to begin to build this bridge between Earth civilization and these other civilizations. We are working with people who have worked with President Kennedy and President Eisenhower, who dealt with the remains of these crashed spacecraft and their bodies. Very credible people. And they, as well as everyone else we're talking with, will tell you that it has been horrifically mismanaged. The secrecy around it has been the most extreme of anything in the modern era. And because of that, it has resulted in a very serious absence of consensus in the world community of how to respond in a peaceful fashion, so that we don't do things covertly that could lead to a interplanetary conflict. And what we're concerned about is trying to build that foundation for relations between human civilization and what other civilizations we may encounter. And there may be one and there may be 1,000. We don't know.
If we come on to the broader question on the crop circles, many people have tried to explain why these entities are producing these circles in the ground. There are lots of different theories, I guess. Have you developed a theory on that, Roy, at all?
Well, I still think to some extent they're playing games with us.
Right.
Because they're teasing us. Even if they're the real messages they're trying to get over to us, they're teasing messages which make us sort of either get worried or dismiss them or whatever, become over concerned about them.
So do you think? I mean, I've heard quite often that there's some kind of non-interference policy, for want of a better word, with ETs and the human race, that it's frowned upon for them to interfere with us, because if they interfere with us, then they essentially become in control of us. As soon as they try and guide us on a different path to what we're on, they're then in control of our destiny to a degree. And therefore, this is what I've been told, is that why within certain ET societies they have this thing that thou shalt not interfere with another race. You will let them get on and live their own lives in their own society and not interfere. But do you think then that somehow they're allowed to interfere with their crop circles, but they're not allowed to take any direct intervention? And if so, why are they so cryptic? You know, that's what I.
Well, that's why I thought they were playing games,
Mhm.
because they're not really being direct with us.
No.
And the other thing is that I think if we were approaching an underdeveloped civilization on another planet now, if we were to find one, we wouldn't want to interfere with it either,
No.
because we'd want to observe it.
Yeah.
Just as I wanted to observe those spiders I was telling you about.
Yeah.
I wanted to see how they developed.
Yeah.
And that would be the sensible way of doing it. In the past, people have found uncivilized peoples in distant lands on the
And
earth,
everybody says.
and
"You
immediately
don't-"
tried to change them.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
Yeah.
there's generally two camps, isn't there? There's the people who, well, I mean, there's a lot of outrage at people, you know, ruining the Aborigines or the Native Americans and all the rest of it. There, you know, there is a school of thought that we should have let those societies remain, and that's possibly what the ETs are like, as you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's
So.
one good reason for standing off.
Mhm.
But personally, I'm of the view that they're not standing off all that much, that they are interfering with
Yeah.
us, if only by being there.
Yeah.
We know they're there.
Yeah.
Therefore, they are interfering with the way we think.
Mhm. You see, if you accept that there's an abduction program, and many people do, and there's physical evidence of it from people like Roger Lear, that if there is a rule that they shouldn't interfere, then they're breaking that rule through abduction. It just perplexes me, the whole crop circle thing. But is that what they're trying to do? And the other thing that also perplexes me is that it's never really given any major coverage in the news.
Oh no.
I mean, you get the odd picture in the Daily Mail or something like that, you know, isn't this curious?
Why create panic
Mm-hmm.
about some on things that you have no real proof of? And that is the trouble. I think we have to accept, those of us who study this subject, have to accept that the abduction events have taken place, that people have been interfered with, and that there was some sort of program in that, and I think it was a limited time when this was happening, some sort of program in that to discover more about people's condition here on this planet, to find out how they were progressing, in effect. Now, there have been an awful lot of things happening on this planet which have affected, including the nuclear fallout and all that sort of thing, which have affected people's health. And it could well be that what they were going to be doing was checking them out when it came to the physical examinations. And for those who got the mental process, they were being investigated for the effects it was having, the lifestyle was having on their thinking. From
the abduction researcher Daryl Sims, he believes that the abduction program, they actually lie to humans. They use subterfuge, and they basically, they're dishonest with abductees, and they do have their own program, and they use the things that they say so that the humans actually can't find out what they're really up to. They confuse people, and you know.
I think one of the things I suspect with Morgan from way back is that they're trying to check our gullibility. How clever are these people? If they believe this? If we tell them this, and let's see what they make of it. It's we do things like this with animals. We have done, you know, where we've given animals the kind of treatment which makes them think that certain feeding habits or whatever are normal. And I was thinking particularly of an experiment I saw years ago on television, where they had checked cats for psychosomatic illness, and or neurosis, And what they did was they had two cats, and each cat had to lift the box lid up to get at its food. One cat got its food, no problem. You see, they soon learned to lift the box lid and get its food. The other poor cat, sometimes when it lifted the lid, a hiss of air went straight into its face.
Right. Yeah.
And after a while, that poor cat couldn't eat. It was starving to death. It curled up in the corner and just lost interest in life, you know. So, I mean, that's an experiment. That sort of shows that even cats can get neurotic if they're in a situation where they can't understand or control the situation they're in. And it seems to me that some of the experiments that have been done with people are of that kind.
What are your thoughts on time travel, Roy?
I'm almost sure it's happening.
When we were in the museum, we saw the Doctor Who's TARDIS, and I mentioned whether you thought time travel was possible or not.
I don't think time is what we think it is.
Okay.
I think time is something which is not linear, as we try to depict it,
Right.
and not even as Einstein depicts it.
Okay.
That there is a possibility of time slips from one time to another, and I think this would explain hauntings and things of that sort. That impressive events in the past sometimes impose themselves into the present.
Okay.
And it is possible that we are ghosts in somebody's past, you know.
Right. Okay.
Or rather, we're in ghosts in somebody's present, future, you know. We don't know how time works because it is beyond our comprehension. We're in the system. It's rather like, I think, a wheel in a clock, the old-fashioned clock, trying to get out of the clock and trying to find out how it works. Because as soon as it moved itself out of the clock, the clock wouldn't work anymore, would it?
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't work. Certainly, wouldn't work as it did before. So, I think we are actually delving into an area which is beyond our ken, literally beyond our understanding, because we have a limited brain power. We have a limited consciousness. We don't really know who we are or what we are. And this is another thing about the surety of modern science. It shouldn't be like that. They should be philosophical.
Yeah. Yeah, they
As it
certainly
used to
don't
be.
have answers to everything.
No.
But if you watch the television, it would lead you to believe, well, watch certain television, mainstream television, it would lead you to believe that they do have an answer to
That's
everything.
right, yes. And it really isn't good enough for scientists to put this idea out. They're not gods, but they are trying to be the new gods, the new high priests of truth, you know, and all that. They see through a glass darkly, just like the rest of us, but they've just got a bit more knowledge in particular areas.
Okay then, Roy, well, we're coming to the end of the tape now, and I'd like to thank you and Marion very much indeed for taking part in this interview.
It's been a pleasure, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
I hope there'll be some more.
Right. Okay.